Hello and welcome to the Trust and Influence in B2B podcast. My name is Joel Harrison. I'm your host. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the challenge of managing a future fit marketing team and all the trust implications that exist around that. And we're going to explore what it means for not only marketing leaders, but marketing team leaders in order to be a part of that future vision, that future setup that we all need to be successful. Building the right marketing team has never been more of an issue in B2B marketing for a variety of reasons. And some of the approaches that were expedient perhaps in the past in terms of how we structured our marketing teams in B2B are far from certain to be optimal in the future. That's a very diplomatic way of saying lots of things are changing. It seems that everyone in B2B marketing teams is going to be more flexible perhaps in terms of structure and resource allocation than they might have been in the past. So this is a really big issue, really exciting and central to how we know that B2B marketing operates. And joining me to discuss this is Roland Glass, who's CEO of Hello Kindred, who are specialists in digital talent management for marketing teams and operate across 4 continents. And as well as Roland, we've got Shane Redding, who is an extremely well-known figure in B2B marketing circles and is also one of the experts in B2B marketing's Propolis community, amongst many other things. So Roland and Shane, welcome.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joel. Nice to be here.
It's lovely to see you both. And it's worth saying the next thing we say is that the catalyst for doing this, because we're all still buzzing from a round table, which were held recently, attended by prominent B2B marketing leaders and very, very well attended as well. And they all provided a fascinating perspective. We all were there. We all participated in that. So it's good to kind of talk about that and use that as a context to kind of help set the scene for the conversation we're going to have. So Roland, Hello Kindred, you organised this roundtable because you sensed there was a pressing conversation that was required to happen around marketing talent strategies. But given the marketing leaders need to build trust with their CEOs and CFOs around team investments, what was the catalyst, do you think, that we need to bring these people together? What drove all that?
Thank you, Joel. So it's actually been a concept that's been, I suppose, in incubation for some time. And so if we have a look over the last 3 to 4 years, the conversations that we're having across our network and across our customer base that sit globally, primarily out of Europe, the UK and the US, is that there's been this long-standing disconnect between the way in which marketing teams have been accessing their marketing and creative talent. And so the traditional way of resourcing for a team has largely been permanent FTE, full-time employees in the office in London, Paris, New York, potentially Johannesburg as well. And, with that, a complement of agency services and then a sprinkle of freelance. And what we're seeing now is just these questions being asked if this has really worked in the past and if the structures that were built, which were heavily resourced, they're extremely rigid, unflexible in terms of retainers, whether those are the right ways for marketing and CMOs and marketers to design their teams now and into the future. And as we go through this cycle of increased disruption, we're in a period where every one of our clients is talking about resource constraints. There's lots of uncertainty in the markets, and executives are triple checking their operating models, including CMOs. And the questions are being asked in terms of the return, the value, the cost structures, and are these operating models and resource strategies designed correctly? And so we're finding that CMOs are under pressure to do more with less. And there's this demand at the moment on CMOs to consider building alternative operating models and look at their resourcing very differently. And so we wanted to bring together a team of CMOs that would help support us and themselves in defining the problem statement. And I suppose discussing over time some of the possible solutions in how to solve and how to approach these challenges that they're seeing within their organizations of it's time to do more with less and resource constraints, budgets cuts, and under the microscope in terms of the old operating model and potentially what the future looks like.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. It's really well put, and that's a great context for us. I mean, Shane, just coming in on this one, you were at a mixed point about uncertainty. I mean, the only certainty we have today is uncertainty, it seems. Is this a full-blown crisis, or is it kind of a tactical recalibration?
Neither. I think this is smart organisations, forward-thinking businesses adapting to change. And Roland put it beautifully. It's actually we require new organisational structures to meet a new world. Different society, different work, different buyers, different products. Everything has changed. You can't stay the same. And I love the fact that Roland pinpointed it by saying rigid doesn't work anymore. In order to meet change, you need to be flexible and fast. And we need different skill sets going forwards.
Because it's not just around the marketing leader needed to change their perspectives and expectations, it's also about the members of the team. So we've all got to get realigned and expect that what we thought was perhaps our structure and our future, our hierarchy, that might not look like that in the future.
Absolutely. And I think different business strategies require different ways of thinking and different ways of working.
Okay, really, really fascinating. It was a really interesting conversation. So, Roland, in terms of the objectives for this, I mean, as well as you were trying to help, am I right in thinking that you were trying to get the CMOs and the marketing leaders there to kind of give you their inside track on what was going on, how on the challenges they were facing that was leading to this necessity to think about change. We also wanted them to learn from each other, right? You know, that's the whole point of a round table. It's about everyone's learning from each other.
I mean, absolutely. So we're only solving part of the Rubik's Cube. And, for me, I believe there was an opportunity for us to create a safe space for CMOs to discuss what a future fit marketing team would look like. And I think actually what came out of it, which was an unintended consequence, is the question of what does a future fit CMO look like? And extremely valuable opportunity for myself personally to sit in a room with CMO, marketing executives and leaders to tackle these challenges. And so there's a couple of facts on the table, I think, which are causing disruption within this question of what my operating model should be, what is my resourcing strategy, where do I get my talent from, how do I be future fit? And so the facts for us are quite clear. The typical way of resourcing is on a very steep downward trajectory. Full-time in the office is no longer something that we consider as the right way to approach every project, and every role. What we also know is that talent wants to work differently. So you've got Gen Z, which are natively digital. I mean, asking them to come into the office 5 days a week and stay in the same role for 10 years is like asking them to go into the bank to get money. I mean, it's not something that they're ever going to experience in their life. I mean, Gen Z is not going to the bank to get money. And so, both those, so we call them BC facts, so what was happening before COVID and then what happened after COVID. And then all of a sudden we enter AI. And it's like this, okay, now what moment? Are we in a skills boom, or are we in a skills bust? And we just saw the pulse rate on those three, the convergence of those three things, resourcing looking atypical, AI, a generational cross-section where senior executives want portfolio careers, Gen Zs don't want traditional work environments, workplace and work styles, and that convergence taking place. And the opportunity for us then to create that safe space for CMOs to come together, particularly in a B2B vertical, which is where we live and where we spend the majority of time, we thought was critical.
So it's like it was already a problem, it was already evolving, and then AI comes along and just like takes that and accelerates that challenge. I want to just pick up on something you said right at the beginning of your answer there, which I think we need to address, which is use the expression Rubik's Cube, right? Which I love. I was at the round table, but so can you explain what you mean by that for people who haven't heard you describe it this way before?
So the way in which the CMOs that we're working with are approaching their target operating model is to shift from functional design to output and value. So the consideration in terms of how do we create the right value and create the right output for the organizational stakeholders. And once that operating model and I suppose that value proposition is then defined for the CMO, it's then to consider the target operating model and how do you overlay your talent strategy and your resourcing. And so the traditional one-dimensional block of orange now becomes a Rubik's Cube of what's going to be full-time and in the office and part of my core team with deep retention. Star-shaped marketers versus deep expertise in areas and the area of specialization, what can be moved to alternative markets where there is talent density, time zone benefit, global coverage, along with cost efficiency. What specialist agencies do I need for everything down to podcasts or writing content? Now you have this Rubik's Cube where the way in which you resource is now a combination of all these different turns and clicks. And what we're working with our clients is actually just to create that Rubik's Cube with them, to work through a process of understanding what fits their business, their organization, what's going to deliver the output and the value for each area of output, for each part of the business, as opposed to a single instrument, a single tool to address the problem.
I think it's a great visual metaphor. We all just get it. We know particularly those of us a certain age, get what Rubik's Cube is. Shane, you're smiling. I think this resonated with you. Is that right?
Absolutely. I really love it because I think it's this, the great thing about Rubik's Cube is you can change it. And, it's that agility that I think increasingly going forwards that particularly, and I absolutely echo what Roland's saying, is there's this huge pressure, as we all know in B2B, to be more commercial, to focus on input and output for impact. What's the revenue that teams will be able to deliver? What will marketing, how can marketing show its commercial value? And we all know this is absolutely enormous. And being really blunt, that's perhaps one of the colours in the Rubik's Cube that's been missing. So, how do you build that in along with growth in markets that aren't experiencing growth? Some are. So all of this needs to change things and be more agile is very, very important. And absolutely agree with Roland. We need to look at different ways of doing that.
You can change it. And the other aspect is it's not the same for everybody, right?
Exactly.
So I think that where it might metaphors obviously have but I think the thing for me is it's a Rubik's Cube in play, right? That has different varieties for everybody. No one solution to right for anybody, and everyone's got to find the right one for themselves and then find how they fit into that. So the other, so really great metaphor to understand this. Another thing that came out of our conversation at the roundtable was the notion of a star-shaped marketer, specialists who lack commercial breadth. Why do you think, Shane? Why do you think we've ended up with a skills polarization, and what's at stake if we don't address that?
So I started talking about the star-shaped marketer about a year ago, and it's actually really relates to me for the role of the CMO. The CMO has to basically absolutely align the top of the star, if you like, with the strategy, the North Star, to the board, and link the business strategy to deploy the marketing strategy. That's always been our job. But then in the past, we were able to deploy that with our marketing team, if you like, across the breadth of the go-to-market. That is actually, that middle layer is what's lacking, because what we've got is people who've come into their careers as very, very narrow specialists. They've come in as a deep search expert, which is fantastic. Or they're a HubSpot qualified operator. They've come into MOPS, but they're not coming in. And I think one of the things that came out of the discussion at the roundtable was fantastic. People genuinely felt that for those of us who are a lot older, graduate programs were based on you learn all the skills. You came in and you trained in different departments, not just in marketing, that you did your stint in sales. In my case, I had the joy of working in a warehouse as well. And I just really learned that sticking on labels the right way up is, it's a skill. Not one I had, but that breadth of understanding how all the jigsaw fitted together and that we're all really important parts is the bit that many new into the market never get, particularly if they joined during COVID, to Roland's point. They joined remotely, digitally, no culture in an office to absorb. So that middle layer that's sort of growing up has not had often that breadth, and it's a real challenge.
The part of that related to me, I remember a marketer using expression a while ago to me as a marketing leader said, I need to know enough about everything to be dangerous. Because you can't just, and actually this came through in particularly the conversations about advertising recently, people have just outsourced all of that and not had to worry or not felt they needed to think about other things, and it's starting to come back to bite them. Roland, what's your take on this? Have you got a perspective on kind of this middle layer in terms of their understanding of what's required and the kind of practical, the gaps between those junior specialists and those senior roles? Are you seeing that at the companies you're working with?
Yeah, most definitely. So I think just to, Shane, the previous question just on the, star-shaped versus, deep expertise, T-shaped or areas of specialism. And I think, whether it's defined as a middle layer of talent or whether it's defined as generalist and more specialist skills, I think both of those actually exist in the same conversation. And because unfortunately, I think the further up you go, the more you lose your area of specialization, and your focus and roles on managing budgets and managing metrics, and managing change rather than hands on the tools. So I think they are definitely linked. I think we're seeing a combination of both. So we're seeing a combination of the middle layer of talent um, being considered in both star-shaped marketers in certain areas, but also very much in an augmented space, so either through a specialist skill or through a specialist agency service, the necessity of having very deep skills. So, CRM or ABM or digital comms. This is no longer saying that'll sit on an organogram in a general marketing role. This is now shifting to very specific hubs and pods and teams for their execution. So when we get a phone call, the conversation is, I need help, and I need help on Monday. Now we got to respond with very specific skills. Someone who can be be on the tools and deliver value that day. And so specialist skills in an augmented space or in a specialist agency service, I think is critical, as well as then, I agree with Shane, the middle layer growing star-shaped marketers that have that comprehensive and knowledge of understanding of the full MNC function, not just a narrow component.
So that's great. There's different dimensions of this change in resource allocation, and the challenges and the solutions need to find to address that. So several participants at the roundtable have mentioned moving towards pod-based structures and more agile operating models. What are the key principles that make these new structures successful, and what are the common pitfalls that you see organisations falling into when they're using them or trying to? Shane?
So I see that pods often come out of an approach to marketing that's based on Agile. It's often focused on new ways of working, particularly around growth acceleration, that test, learn, iterate, and they need the multidisciplinary skills that Roland was talking to before. Sometimes these evolve into centres of excellence, which become more permanent, and that's where Central might own, for example, the go-to-market, and then the local teams deploy in country with Adaptation. That's, if you like, what makes them successful. There's very clear ownership, very clear processes, roles and responsibilities, critical. I'll let Roland answer the pitfalls.
Roland, tell us about the pitfalls.
So I'm a big advocate of pods, hubs, project teams. And we're seeing them being rolled out in so many different areas, and this is a question you're going to have to ask me to stop on, because it's a part of what we're doing that I'm just loving at the moment, because it embodies this agile and flexible way of creating deep areas of specialization. It talks about finding, don't solve a problem with a blunt tool. Use a sharp instrument. And the sharp instrument can have quality, can have speed, and can have cost efficiency. It can have the magic trifecta built into it. And so we're seeing this across a broad spectrum of really custom bespoke, writing hubs, or bid and proposal hubs, or digital assets rebranding project, building templates and toolkit. I think the pitfalls for me are probably more guardrails to say, really consider what that project looks like, consider the scope, consider the time, and then go to that Rubik's Cube and your partners, your leadership group, and say, how are we going to build the sharpest instrument we have to get this project done fast, cost effectively, and in extremely high quality. And we're seeing, to Shane's point, 90-day template toolkit an event, rebrand 1,000 projects, up to a COE function, which is established on a permanent basis, but done with that sharp instrument consideration in mind.
So it can be. It's one of those. It's another solution to a dynamic, flexible problem. It's not a panacea. It's not going to solve all your problems overnight, but it can be something that's useful. And it's about thinking pragmatically and flexibly about resource considerations around business challenges rather than being rooted to what you did in the past.
Absolutely, and we've seen this in certain instances, multidisciplinary teams. So teams that come together that include marketing, comms, digital, design, content generation, and representation from technology and systems. And then we're seeing really focused, this is a writing pool. And within that writing pool, we have B2B specialists in financial services, in other markets, in other sectors. So there's some creative, innovative ways in which these sharp instruments are being approached by clients. I'm just loving. We're doing some great work in this space. That's not a self-promotional basis. That's actually it's a blessing for us in that we're getting to work in a really exciting new way of bringing the right resources into the business for the right cost, for the right time to get the job done. And as you say, you're welcome to tell me to stop.
Thank you, Roland. It's great. I appreciate the candidness about this because you're understanding these concepts as well. Shane, have you experienced this working with your clients? Have you seen how this team structure can work?
I have, and I think Roland just made a fabulous point about, sometimes this deep specialism, like a writing pool, where your best copywriters are being deployed much wider across the business. But the reason this is so powerful is because, of course, now going forwards, these specialist teams can be augmented with AI. And that's where you need to bring together the specialism with the new tools. Hence, Ron's saying that you might need, the technical skills there, but you still need that layer of what's the point? It's not just creating lots of stuff. It's the focus on the commercial impact. Can we do where we started more cost effectively, efficiently, but the important thing is effectively. That's what I'm saying.
And that actually dovetails brilliantly because we do need to talk about AI because you may have heard about artificial intelligence. It's quite a big deal in marketing these days. And there was one of the conversations, one of the things that the points that was made was that AI being suggested that AI was next to useless for junior members, but highly valuable for experienced members. I mean, that's a big challenge, Shane, right? Isn't it? How to utilize AI across different levels of experience within teams and deploy it at the right level.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm going to completely disagree with that. It's just like, I understand where the person was coming from, but actually the real skills and the usage, and we see it if those of us who've got children, it's they're native to it. It's that, we've gone beyond native digital markets. They're native AI now. And we all use AI without realizing it, but they're using AI intentionally. And that's the difference. And I think what I'm seeing is this schism, and I'm fascinated to see Roland, how his clients are managing this between organizations that, if you like, are still in a, you can't use this. Well, the reality is their bright teams are using them anyway. That's the reality. And I think the smart marketing leaders, the CMOs, which is fascinating, are appointing themselves a junior mentor to bridge that gap between, if you like, the understanding of how you use the strengths and weaknesses of all the different AI tools that are out there for marketers, because there's so many, how they're using them, how they're learning them, but helping them in terms of forming intelligent prompts. And also in training them to, well, actually, if I like to use the expression, if AI tells you to turn right strategically, how does a marketing leader, how does a consultant on working with teams using AI get the team instead to turn left, think differently? Because actually, everybody can turn right. That's the easy way of doing it.
So that's a great point. I heard people saying, ask AI what is she doing and do the opposite. Roland, how are you utilizing AI amongst how are you seeing it with your clients? Are you utilizing people who work for you as outsourced resource? What are you finding?
So And just to Shane's earlier comment, so I think what's not in the Rubik's Cube is let's take all our work and push it to junior team members at the lowest cost environment and throw a bunch of AI tools at them to get the job done more accurately. That's not on the Rubik's Cube. In other environments, there may be a business case for that. We're not seeing it across our customer base. So B2B marketing, multinational, professional services, financial services, banking, the considerations around where work is allocated is far more purposeful. And the use of AI is then a part of the target operating model. That's not a haphazard. They definitely are still in a trial and test phase. I think we're seeing significant impact and we've got no excuses. So the ability for us to build decentralized teams, that create a cross-section of all the benefits we've been speaking about to this point, the tools are there. So collaboration tools, communication tools, augmenting workflows, even how that improves efficiency, creativity is there. The business case is there, the tools are there. And so that adoption and how the talent that we engage with adopt the AI tools that are augmenting how we interact with those stakeholders, with marketers, with their teams is most definitely a retooling process that we all have to go through and the skills around us all have to go through. So we're definitely seeing that as the initial shift. The B2B space, I think the agentic AI function is for me a question mark at this point in time, particularly when it comes to customer contact in a B2B environment. That's a bit scary for me because, the B2B buying relationship is built on trust. I think innately we trust humans and more philosophically we forgive as well, but that's quite expensive. So the agentic and the use of agents in customer journeys for me is slightly scary. I think data analytics is moving fast. AI use there, I think, will proliferate the CMO's agenda and the CMO's objectives. And then I think the jury's still out on AI-generated content. I think most of the concerns they actually raised around this point was in AI-generated content, specifically in writing. And so what do you have in terms of rules of engagement, or what is the CMO going to define as the parameters for using AI in generating content? And creating mass customization of content in the B2B space does not exist. And so I think there is a question mark on how do we use it responsibly from a content generation perspective and from a customer connection perspective, augmenting workflows, creating decentralized teams that can interact and collab. I think that's an exciting place to be.
Yeah, I guess that what I take from all of that is that there's no one solution for everybody. There's no something you can take off the shelf and just adopt that. Everyone's got to find. There are so many facts, issues or components or considerations that are going to help you, going to determine how you use it and when you use it. And those are changing all the time as well. So agility, flexibility, being a bit dynamic is what's going to should be governing this. Shane, would you agree with that?
I would, and I think it's the two skills that are, to me, are paramount. I touched on one, thinking skills. How to use it well. And by well, I mean exactly as Roland said, to help your customer. Not just because we can. And we do know that marketing, we've fallen into the trap in the past. Email, we killed email because basically we just resorted to using it as spam. And I think the same is true of AI. We've got to understand, how does it help our customers? When do our customers go, you've made it easier for me, fabulous. Oh, actually, no, I need the human element here. So I think that's super important. So what is that thinking skill? I think the second part, which is going to be massive, is ethics. And that is training, not just marketers, training all our teams to use the tool ethically, particularly as we move through agentic AI, where we get machine-to-machine communication, which is where we're going. And I think it's really interesting that Cambridge University has got the first faculty which brought together IT, ethics and law and business, because they've recognised it's a multidisciplinary agenda.
So great to bring ethics and trust back into this conversation, which is fundamental. I think it underpins everything that we're going through in B2B marketing right now. So fascinating conversation. AI it's just we're all learning as we go with this one. So another aspect of all of this changing, shifting model and the associated agility that goes with this is around culture. And when you work with teams that are distributed across different locations with different working arrangements, that creates some cultural challenges. Roland, what have you learned about maintaining culture, or what do you think the issues are around maintaining culture and developing talent when you haven't got that traditional ability to kind of learn through osmosis?
So I think, going back to sort of the fun facts about BC and before COVID, this is how organizations and teams are going to be built. We're not going to see it differently. And so, there's starting on an organizational level, then down to an executive level, then to a leadership level, and then right the way through those team structures. This is, we have to now really consider the culture we want to create. And so where we've seen CMOs really create scale and capacity and maintain that agility and that flexibility and move into this, how do we augment and do this differently space, is by creating a really inclusive culture in terms of it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what your contract type is, and it doesn't matter what your area of speciality is or how long you're here for. We've created an inviting environment. So our environment is about building talent density and talent inclusiveness. And so we have the ability to absorb great people for as long as the project, as long as the role, as long as the requirement to get work done, but an environment from systems and IT to collaboration, their rituals, the behaviors as teams, the leadership style, to make that an environment and a team dynamic that embraces talent no matter where you're from. And I think if you can achieve that, whether it's an agency service or whether it's an individual on contract or whether it doesn't matter how this is formed, I think those forward-thinking CMOs have the ability to be more innovative, to stay closer what future fit may look like by looking at culture very differently. It's no longer your perm, your contract, and your agency. That's an archaic way of us engaging as humans and engaging from talent. Then you get the power of accessing talent in different markets. This wonderful, agile, flexible, who's the right person for the job? Where's the right skills? How do I do it cost effectively? How do I do it flexibly? You get that dynamic, you get those benefits. If you stay within the traditional cultural box, I think as a future fit CMO, you're going to fail or fall short.
Yeah, it's really, really well said, Roland. It's a very cultures. It's a people business, isn't it, Shane? And that culture and those human relationships are critical in getting good work done.
Good work and innovation. I mean, one of my joys as a global consultant is working with different teams from around the world, whether that's remotely or actually visiting in person. And I think sometimes we forget, if you like, the future is there in another country. I certainly learned the first time I went to South Africa, which was pre-pandemic. I got off the plane and I opened my phone and I had business messages on WhatsApp. And I was like, whoa, what's this? This is my media for family and friends. And then I asked the conference that I was speaking at, 90% of the marketers in the room were already using WhatsApp for marketing. Just not happening at that point in the UK particularly, but even in Europe. It's starting to increase, but it's certainly not the same level. So those, that, as you say, if you have diverse teams, that sharing of thinking of what's new in one market is not new somewhere else, but that is brilliant. The other thing I also think we need to be very sensitive to is how cultures interplay and that we can sometimes misunderstand each other, not just because of language. And there's a book that I talk about because it changed my thinking called The Culture Map by Erin Mayer, who's a professor at INSEAD. And it's the best one if you have a global team that you can all read together, because for the first time, your American team will read the bit about the Brits and will go, oh, so that's why you're like that. It's very helpful.
I mean, that might be the best team building exercise you can do if you've got an international team. Read this book together. So we had some great suggestions in me around sharing creative ideas and things like that. But whatever, there's different solutions, different people. Just draw it to a close now. Last couple of questions I want to ask. So first of all, future-proofing and strategic thinking. So Roland, looking beyond the immediate challenges that we've explored here today and also in the roundtable as well, what do you see as the biggest strategic shifts that marketing leaders need to make in how they think about talent and team building over the next 3 to 5 years?
So Shane mentioned it earlier, very well put, was this alignment to business objectives. And I think understanding and alignment to business objectives, the value proposition, the outputs required, and then real consideration. And that can be building a foundation while you're flying the plane. You can be building the plane while flying it. We don't all have the luxury of taking a break and doing a big transformation project where, everyone has day-to-day objectives. I think once that's done, the ability, look at that target operating model, and I think consider the areas of specialization and how to really level up your contribution to the organization in terms of performance and value and data and analytics and metrics, and and then look at the best way to resource it. Look at the most dynamic way and the most flexible and the most agile way, so that in 6 months' time, if things change and when they do change, you have the ability to adapt, and you can pivot in scale, you can pivot in scope. It's actually quite interesting. And more, I look at these conversations and you look around the table at the CMOs, and maybe that's true of any executive role in an organization. I don't have those touch points, but the ability to manage change and transformation has almost become the number one skill of a chief marketing officer, less marketing communications, customer insight.
Absolutely, I think you're so right in that, and it's not exactly going away, but the kind of period of entry now seems to have just accentuated it twofold. Shane, what do you think about that? What Roland said there, and also what else they should be thinking about doing for the next 3 to 5 years?
I couldn't agree more. I think that is the biggest role that's facing all CMOs: is how do I transform? And if you've not led a transformation before, those of us who've been through it, it's not an easy thing to do. It's really hard, different skills. So this is where I get excited about the Rubik's Cube, because you, as a leader, you need support, just at your own peer level. And that's what a blended team gives you. And we're not just talking about building marketing teams in terms of, if you like, the functional doers, but it's the thinking skills too. It's the people who've done that, transform teams, done different ways of working, that you can build these blended teams for the period that you need to help you through that process. And there's so many options now there to do that. And I think that's super exciting. So I think it's just this whole thing to me is thinking differently. What worked in the past will not necessarily work in the future.
Okay, very, very wise, but you might even say probably won't work in the future as well. That's my words, not yours, Shane. But closing thoughts. I think it's always good to leave people with a kind of, okay, I've listened to all of this, loads of great advice. What do I do now? I'm a bit overwhelmed by all this stuff that I could or should be doing. Roland, if a marketer's listening to this and thinking, and it could be a marketing leader, although I think it's important that I have listeners to this podcast who are also marketing team members, aspirational with this. I need to start somewhere. What should I do? What should you suggest marketers do today or this week in terms of, or this month, to move towards this new future which we're seeing?
I think this concept of and challenging their functional leads within the marketing, communication, creative, and having this leadership conversation about zero blunt tools. We want sharp instruments for every job, on every part of our execution, and on every output. And that's a fun place to be, and it's an expansive place to be, because you can look at things both in terms of the skills and people. You can look at them in the way we work, and our processes, and you can look at it in terms of your systems and AI and technology. And having that ability with the leadership group to say, what does this look like today? Is it fit for purpose? Is it going to serve us well in the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, or 3 years? And then I think it's about moving one part at a time. We've got these wonderful, time-based studies where we've worked with clients for 15 years, for 20 years. And I can tell you about the 20 different things that we did with them, but they didn't all happen at the same time. And it evolved and it moved and it shifted as the business requirements changed, and as they trialed and tested small and then scaled up. And so the key principle for us, and we have this conversation, with ambitious clients that really want to look at a significant transformation and big shifts in how they do this, we say, take an area, let's carve it out. What's going to deliver quick value to the organization? What's going to really give impact to your stakeholders? Carve it out. Let's start small. Let's test this and trial it, not because we're not confident in our ability or other partners' ability, but because the organization needs to change and shift. The stakeholders, the marketers need to change and shift, and then trial and test and enhance and then scale. And so I'd carve out that area and I'd have a look at it differently, and I'd challenge a leader or leadership group to see what an alternative way of doing things would look like. And I think, you move things incrementally and you look back in 12 months and 18 months and you go, I can't believe that that's where we were and this is where we are today. So, 1 degree per day and over time, you've built a transformation without, I suppose, the shock and and the friction of these transformation projects.
I think a shock-free world is definitely what we all want these days, isn't it? Shane, what do you think about that? What advice would you offer to someone who were looking to start somewhere?
Completely the same. I mean, echo that. Wise words, focus. We all take on too much. What's the one business problem? And I use that very deliberately, not marketing problem. What's the one business problem that we're trying to solve that marketing can be part of? Is it in your pipeline, your conversion level is 1 in 20 when it should be 1 in 3? It's very, very focused. You then use your sharp instrument to look at ways of solving that in a very defined period. You show the impact, and that allows you and builds the business case. That's why Roland, has got such great clients that have been there for a long time. You have to prove it. So, yeah, very, very wise words.
And you have to prove it, so you're building trust within as a marketer, as a marketing leader, for upward and downward management, and you have to build your commercial now so that you're going to be taken seriously. And because everything's changing, we've seen that. So this is a conversation which could have easily been twice as long as it's today, because it's a fascinating topic and so richly nuanced. And I'm so grateful to Roland and Shane for their time today and their contribution to this. And it's a great discussion on top of a great roundtable. So thank you both for being part of it today. Really enjoyed your insights.
Great, thank you, Joel. That was lots of fun. Thanks for having me, and the roundtable was great, and look forward to being part of these conversations as we go forward.
Thanks, Roland.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you both. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, and there's lots more content like this all around the subject of trust, relating to all the different aspects, because it relates to everything in B2B marketing. There is a trust crisis going on, but its transformation is required at a senior level within marketing teams. Marketing leaders and marketing ambitious professionals within teams need to change, and all organizations need to change. So please subscribe, please like this podcast, and please listen again for more interesting insights. And I hope you can join us again very, very soon. But from me, for now, thanks and goodbye.